Oh, there you are, Brad.
For a little ways in, a little while anyways. Come on.
Yeah. See what happens.
Trying to get, yeah.
You've really fixed the tractor.
All right, going to call us to order at 12:35. And Trustee Yegas, could you please do our acknowledgement of land?
Welcome to our division office located on the traditional land and territory of the Niitsitapi, Piikani, Kainai, and Siksika, the Blackfoot people within Treaty 7 region of southern Alberta.
Thank you, Trustee Yegas. We will now have O Canada. Everyone can just turn off their cameras. Thank you. Moving on to our consent agenda. If there are no errors or admissions in the minutes of the April 2020 regular board meeting, special board meeting, Livingston Range School Division, it is recommended that the minutes be approved by the board. Recommendation that the May 18th, 2020 consent agenda be approved by the Board of Trustees as presented or amended. Can I get someone to make that motion? Trustee Yegas. Any opposed? Okay, passed. On to emergent changes in the agenda. Recommendation that the May 18, 2021 regular board meeting agenda be approved by the Board of Trustees as presented or amended. Can I get someone to make that motion? Trustee Poitras. We have one change on the agenda to, I just got to find it here. To F1, we're going to defer that to the June board meeting. Administration needs a little bit more time to complete this, and so it'll be brought forth to our June meeting. That was F1. Anything else for emergent changes to the agenda? Any opposed? Passed. Any declaration of conflict of interest? Seeing none. I'm now going to call us to move in camera at 12:39. Can someone please make a motion to move in camera? Trustee Poitras. Perfect, thank you. We can record again. So moving on to our action items. E1, we got our board policy changes. Recommendation that the Board of Trustees approve the changes made to the Board Policy 2, Assurance Framework, Board Policy 6, Rule of the Board Chair, Policy 7, Rule of the Vice Chair, Policy 8, Board Operations, Policy 11, Policy Making, and Policy 12, Board Delegation and Authority as presented or amended. Trustee Yegas, do you want to speak to that, please?
I'll also move that. Okay.
Thank you.
This was sent out to you, and you have all of the changes. Many of them weren't changes that affected it. Just some wasn't even housekeeping. It was, for example, on the insurance framework, the thing was before December, so we changed it to annually because there are areas times have changed, or the different dates have changed when these were had to be done. So we just put annually. Policy 8, we added the vice chair. Policy 6, policy 7, we added a meeting with the chair and the superintendent. We added chair. Policy 8, delegations to the board. To send letters, we put superintendent and the board chair so they would know what's going on. Policy 11, policy making, we had to look at changing it, of course, to Education Act. And the 12, we looked at the virtual learning and the sentence, the superintendent is responsible for the administration of all other policies. The other thing is the advocacy committee was not on the online policy, so that has to be added. Other than that, we have gone through all of our policies now, and I think they have all been fixed. And I know we're still going to find some things in them that for the future, because we have a tendency to miss things when we read them. But right now, I think they're in good condition, and I'll just have to review the ones online to make sure that all the changes are there. And hopefully we don't have any more major policy changes before the end of the end of the year. So I would like to move that we pass this unless there's some questions.
Any questions or comments? No. Seeing none. Clara, it looks like everything is pretty much just some housekeeping details, so not too much of a big change at all.
No, one of the things I should mention is that we did this morning at the policy meeting. We're going to be looking at having some board governance for orientation for the next board when it comes on, but that will be presented to the next board meeting. That's it.
Perfect, thanks. If there's no other questions or comments, any opposed? Seeing none, passed. Okay, moving on to E2, the budget report, Livingston Range School Division. The 2021-2022 Livingston Range School Division budget report is to be approved by the Board of Trustees and submitted to Alberta Education by May 31st, 2021. Mr. Jeff Perry, Associate Superintendent of Business Services, will review the proposed budget for the board's approval. The recommendation that the 2021-2022 budget for the Livingston Range School Division be approved by the Board of Trustees for submission. Trustee Burdette has made that motion. Did you want to speak to it at all, Trustee Burdette, or turn it over to Mr. Perry?
I think we just turn it over to Mr. Perry.
Thank you very much. Mr. Perry?
Okay, thank you. Nikki, am I able to share my screen, or do you have to?
You should be able to.
Should be able to, okay. Okay, everyone can see the 2021-22 draft budget report?
Yes.
Okay,
yep.
Perfect. I like it better when you're looking at slides than me. But this will be interesting. I haven't done a budget, draft budget report to the board virtually before. So what I've done is I've prepared a PowerPoint presentation above and beyond sending you the draft report that you had in your package. So I will go through the information on the budget report, the document that you have, but I'll do it in this manner. And so within this document, I'll identify what page I'm referring to. So if you have questions with regards to that page, then you have the ability to ask questions in relation to that at the time, or you can wait to the end to ask your questions. It's really up to you when you want to ask the question. So because I can't see you and I don't know if Lori can, you can just speak up and interrupt me if you have a question, I guess.
Sorry, Mr. Perry, just before you continue on, if everybody could just use your raise your hand function, I can see that. So if you have a question, please use the raise your hand function, and then I can call on you.
Perfect. Okay, so let's get started. Maybe. Okay. The first thing I wanted to say is that there's so much uncertainty with regards to where we're going into the future in relation to what it might look like with regards to the pandemic, the impact that it's had on the previous year, the current year, and planning for the future year without an understanding of what the restrictions may be and so forth. There are some things that we do know, and we'll go through that. But we've had to be flexible and have the ability within this budget to adapt to whatever scenario we find ourselves in the fall. Things are looking good with regards to the potential of getting back to some normalcy, but nonetheless, we have to be prepared for whatever it might call for. So what I've titled this budget is that we need to learn from the past, plan in the present, and prepare for the future. And so we'll go forward with kind of that theme. So the first thing is learn from the past. Basically, where we're going to be in the current year, which would have an impact on the future budget. So this year, as we've analyzed, and learned some things from the pandemic and what's occurred this year, we anticipate that at the end of this year, we'll have a sizable surplus moving forward into the upcoming year. And this seems to be pretty consistent among other jurisdictions. Pretty much budgeted for this year to be typically a normal year, and we've added costs associated with COVID, so supplies, custodial staffing, subs, and things of that nature in preparation for what might occur. But yet there was other areas in which we had significant savings. And we also received some federal funding to support us on those COVID expenditures. So I'll just go through this. So we've added a budget for COVID expenditures, supplies, custodial staffing, subs. We added teachers. When we heard of the federal funding and the provincial funding for COVID, we added additional teachers to accommodate the at-home learning. We did not decrease teaching staff out at the school level. We allowed them to maintain the teaching staff that they had in anticipation that there would be challenges that they would face with the new reality that they were looking at. And so for the most part, we used the federal and provincial COVID funding for the at-home learning, as well as the supplies, custodial staff, and subs, and things of that nature. Like I said, we had significant savings that were experienced in certain areas. We traveled less to meetings. For the most part, I would say 95 to 99% of our meetings now went virtual. And so there was no travel costs associated with that. So our travel budgets were not utilized significantly. PD costs, although PD continued to go on, again, there was no travel costs. You didn't have lodging or anything of that nature that was incurred when you did PD. Even the board, I know Clara was sending out all kinds of PD. Many of them were free. They were offering those things for free, and there were significant discounts because they didn't have to have a location to rent or anything of that nature. And so there were significant savings in the PD area, even though PD continued to go on. We also anticipated a significant increase in our subs. That wasn't realized. We had a small increase we anticipate a small increase based on where we're at right now. So there's some savings there. it seemed like the perfect storm because we had such a mild winter this year as well that our utilities were less, our fuel costs for busing was less, our repairs and maintenance budget was less because of the buses were not in extreme conditions that they typically are in. So there was fewer things breaking down on buses and so forth. So there was significant savings in that area. Insurance was lower than what we anticipated. So remember, we had a significant discussion with regards to where insurance would be. It was still significantly higher than normal, but not as high as what we had budgeted in the past. So we didn't have to access as many reserves for that. And so overall, we anticipate a surplus moving into the next year, which would increase our operating reserves. We intend to use those in the upcoming year for pilot projects and so forth, and I'll go through those with you. Because our intent is not to increase our operating reserves. Our intent is to utilize the funds that we have now for the students now. But because we anticipate a surplus going forward, we will utilize that in the upcoming year for a pilot project and some other things related to COVID and so forth, because we're not sure of any additional funding that we'll receive for COVID purposes. We also anticipate we didn't spend as many dollars in our capital side of things. So the evergreening of buses, and we did not spend funds on a maintenance vehicle in this year. And so we do have some funds that will increase our capital reserves, but of course those are only for use of capital items, and we'll utilize those going forward in other ways. So any questions on that? If so, I guess raise your hand. I'll just keep going. And the reason I put page 6 on the budget report is because that is the changes in net assets, and that's where we are required to put where we think we're going to end off in the current year, because it has an impact on the future budget. And so that is one component of the budget. And so I started with that, learn from the past, what we know, and help us plan now for the upcoming year. Okay, so pages 3, 4, 5, and 9 are related to this item. What we are planning for, what we know is Alberta education funding is similar to the prior year. So basically they've identified that the majority of the funding will be the same. You'll notice on page 3, where our Alberta education funding increases. The reason for that, the majority of the reason for that is because our amortization of supported buildings increases. So every year that we capitalize more IMR projects, our amortization increases for those projects, and it's supported, which means we have to match the revenue to the expense. So it's an actual increase of a significant amount in the amortization and in the revenue, but it's actually an in and an out and doesn't really have an impact on the bottom line. So although it appears that the funding is going up significantly, it's not necessarily. The funding is, for the most part, similar to what it was in the prior year. The government indicated that they would not penalize us for having fewer students this year. When we went to the new funding framework, it was based on a WMA, or weighted moving average, which meant we looked at 3 years. And we had originally, for the year that we're in, projected higher than what we actually realized based on the pandemic. Typically, in a normal following year, the government would claw that funding back because our projections were higher than what we had anticipated. This year, the government has said they're not going to claw that money back, and so they called that money COVID mitigation. And that was one of the things that allowed them to say that the funding would be similar to the prior year. We continue to have bridge funding, and that number is actually incorrect on the thing. It's $2 million in what we have in bridge funding, just under $2 million. So I apologize, that's not 1.2.
Jeff, can I
Yeah.
just ask a question about bridge funding? The bridge funding was happening over a 2-year period of time, if I'm not mistaken. And I was just wondering, when they decided to hold us harmless, does that mean that year also didn't count towards bridge funding, and now we have a hold harmless year and then our additional bridge funding year? Or does this still count as the second year, and there'll be then those major drop-offs in the following year?
That's a good question. We've communicated with Alberta Education, and they've not committed for another year of bridge funding. So in this budget, we've had to make the assumption that beyond this year, we'll lose $2 million in bridge funding. You're still in my thunder. That was going to be later on when I talk about prepare
I'm
for the
sorry.
future. But no, that's right. We anticipate, without knowing more from Alberta Education, that because we were supposed to lose $1 million of bridge funding this year, and we did not. They made the statement that they would put COVID mitigation and they would have similar funding, which meant they were going to provide us with bridge funding again this year. So
Okay, sorry about your thunder, but thanks for answering that.
no, that's fine. But no, I'm glad that came out. It is important for us to take that into consideration while we're looking forward. So the areas of increase, here's where I talked about. So UDCC stands for Unspent Deferred Capital Contributions. That's basically the revenue that's matching with the amortization. And so although it's an in and an out, because our amortization went up by about 460,000, so did our revenue. We anticipate that there'll be additional $319,000 of funding that we will potentially need to find for the FACES program to ongoing, or we'll have to reduce by that same amount our FACES programming. Other revenues, we anticipate a decrease in FNMI revenue from what we projected last year. And that's just basically on enrollment. Schools, when they provided their enrollment, indicated that there would be fewer students. And that's what we realized this year, is that there were fewer FNMI students attending our schools. And so even though that level may be the same as what we're experiencing this year, it's less than what we had projected last year. Therefore, it appears to be less on this as well. And then if you look at the other revenues on page 3, all the way down, the schools have slightly decreased fees. They've slightly decreased the other revenues, school generated fund revenue. And again, that's all an estimate. We anticipate that there will be field trips and things of that nature. And so they've planned for that, but it's slightly under what they did in the prior year. Just a second. Okay, so that is the revenue. Enrollment overall, we're anticipating from the prior year is an increase of 22, but our WMA decreases 33.5. So although our projected enrollment is a little bit higher, the weighted moving average is lower because they take into consideration the previous two years as well as our projections. We do anticipate in this budget that there'll be an increase to in-school attendance as well as potentially at home, and going a little bit away from the homeschool education. So we had a huge spike in this past year in home education. I think we went from 20 some students up to 109 students just in this given year. This budget projects, I think, 60 some students being in home education, so a decrease from what we experienced in the current year. Any questions on that? Okay. So what are we planning? So I guess just going back, the reason page 9 is on there is because that's where it talks about the statistics of students. And so you can look at that page and identify that we're decreasing in the area of, or sorry, that you can see that we have a slight increase. You won't see WMA on there, weighted moving average, but that is in all reality, that's how we're funded. And so that's what ends up happening. So in our base funding, we actually decrease a little bit. Other areas in the funding, our specialized learning areas have increased, and then the bridge funding has pretty much stayed the same. So staffing levels, again, one of the first things we did when we received the federal funding is we increased our staffing significantly to accommodate the at-home learning. With no federal COVID funding, obviously we can't maintain the same level of staffing that we had at that point. We will see a reduction in FTE for our certificated teaching. However, we put in place the ability to accommodate the at-home learning program in other ways. And we'll talk about that in the Pursuits program. In addition to that reduction, we've looked at other positions. There's one position that supports schools that will temporarily not be filled this year due to an approved leave. And then we've also taken out any contingency to add to our staffing, and we've made that part of our reserve. So although we budget for it as well and anticipate taking it out of reserves because we have to request from the minister to use reserves, it's not in our staffing element because it is a contingency in nature, and it's not necessarily an actual amount that we're using. So if we do end up using it, then our actual results will increase, but we're not putting that in our, it'll appear that the number of staffing is going down lower because the reserve contingency is not built into that. So we are putting some staffing into our Pursuits Education Program pilot, and you guys have had lots of information on that in the past. So I won't go into that, but we anticipate using reserves to run this program on the upcoming year. Support staffing for practically all positions in the jurisdiction is staying at the same level, and you can see that on page 10. So FSLs, EAs, admin assistants, learning commons, transportation. In fact, transportation will likely increase by one position. But for the most part, all support staff levels are actually staying the same. Some things that are related to staffing is that our benefits increased by 7.85%. So when you look at page 3 and 4, you can see that our staffing costs are relatively similar to what they were in the previous budget, but the benefits cost increased. And that's because of our ASCBP benefits going up 7.85%. And there's explanations for that. That's still below what the standard is for many other benefit programs, but they could no longer subsidize, the usage. And so based on their experience and the investment of the funds that they have, they've had to increase to 7.85% with a potential increase in future years as well, as what we hear. Service contract supplies, there are some increases to that program. We anticipated that in last year's budget, the international program would be decreased. We're planning for a normal year for our international program, if not a little higher than we typically have had. And I know Chad and Jazz have been working in that area. And the hope is that the borders will continue to open for the international students, and that we'll be able to have students in our schools to continue to run that program. So BASES program, we anticipate being back to normal, although there are some challenges with the new funding framework, and in that it's a fixed amount versus the ability to increase our revenue in that area for summer school. And that's one of the challenges that many jurisdictions are facing at this point in time. And given the fact that we had a year where last year where FACES program did not operate, our funding for next year has significantly decreased. And so some of that bridge funding, the hold harmless funding, will have to support that area, and we'll have to take other dollars from reserves to continue to maintain the current services that we have. We anticipate fuel increases for PO&M. We had a good year with low fuel, and which can have an impact on repairs and maintenance, freight, all those kinds of things. So we've taken that into consideration as well. And we've added a few additional programs for inclusion, collaboration, and leadership as far as initiatives. Not a significant amount, but that is part of what we're planning going forward. Again, I already spoke of amortization. The amortization increased by about $460,000, but it's a net impact to zero on the bottom line. So, okay.
Jeff, can I interrupt you again? Sorry.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, I know that there had been some conversations started by boards and in discussion with using, the only term I know is like purple gas for school buses. And I was just wondering, is that conversation still out there? Is that still happening? Is it something that's being considered, or it's like in the midst of COVID, that's all kind of fallen by the wayside? Or is it an ongoing conversation that's been years and never gone anywhere?
Oh, another good question. There's actually a transportation a group. I can't remember the word to call it, but there is a transportation report that they prepared from the review that they did on transportation. With that report, the recommendation is to continue to do some additional analyzing of a few jurisdictions and how they operate and how they utilize the funds that they have to be as efficient as they are, and so forth. One of the ideas that came to that transportation review was the use of purple gas, and whether that would have the ability to save some funds and allow school jurisdictions to operate within that. So it's still ongoing. They're still looking at it, and they're still make changes going forward, but they're not making any changes until they've had the opportunity to review some of the detailed operations of jurisdictions. And there's some other things that they're looking at as well, but that's one of the things that's ongoing. Does that answer your question, Lacey?
It does. Thank you so much.
Okay. Okay, so what are we planning? We're planning for this budget to make a request to the Minister of Education to access just under $1.5 million. And the majority of that can be considered in one-time costs, but hopefully what we find from the pilots are something that can help us be flexible, adaptable, and meet the needs of students and build that into our budgets going forward to help us prioritize what's most effective for students. Some of these things include, so what we're requesting to use just under $1.5 million for is a contingency for COVID expenditures. We anticipate that we're going to need cleaning supplies and those types of things, as well as, so that would include custodial staffing and as well. COVID substitutes, so just a contingency to be able to accommodate if, based on the pandemic, our sub costs increase. We have the Pursuits program that we anticipate piloting over this next school year, and lots of work has gone into that program. The other initiatives was 45,000, cover the PO&M deficit. So it's the PO&M plant operation and maintenance budget went down by $130,000 this year. That's not including the slight decrease that was realized in the IMR CMR area. Word is that some of these dollars went to the learning support area. But for us, we continue to provide bridge funding to PO&M to the amount of about $400,000, but there's still a small deficit of $45,000 that reserves are being requested to cover. Going forward, that's a bigger challenge because we won't have the bridge funding, and so we're currently looking at ways that we have to minimize the amount of funds that need to go from another area into PO&M. It's important. It's interesting to note that in talking with other jurisdictions or other jurisdictions that they have to take from other areas every year to be able to accommodate the costs that are in PO&M. We haven't had that situation in the past, but we're getting close to that, and may be there in a short time. So anyway, that's one of the other reasons. Staff contingency, like I said, our contingency is being built into our reserves versus budgeting for it, and so we're requesting to have a $158,000 contingency for staffing, just to be able to adapt and adjust in school year to any additional staffing needs that we have. And then a contingency of $195,000 to support the summer programming, given the reduction in funding in that area. So that will be our request to access reserves through this budget, if it's approved. What are some other things that we've done as far as cost-cutting measures? We've gone to new software, which is for our financial, HR, payroll, our student information system. We've been working hard on that at this time. That was an opportunity that we saw come come to us, and we did a huge analysis of it, and we made the plunge to focus on ensuring that as many dollars stay in this classroom as possible and reduce the administration costs where we can. And the program, we think, will meet all of our needs. We think it'll actually improve in many areas our operations with regards to our financial and our HR and human resources activities. It doesn't have bells and whistles, but with the bells and whistles comes the cost and the difficulty in the program. And we found that with what we currently had, we had many challenges and we needed to do something, and this was an opportunity for us to save significantly. And so we're reducing by half in that area, which is a significant cost. We've also in many areas reduced our travel, anticipating that travel won't open up entirely upfront, down to 75%. We've anticipated that sub costs we could move to reserves and only access the reserves if we needed them, as well as staff contingency. And we intend in the upcoming year to purchase less regular items as far as vehicles, equipment, and things of that nature than we typically do. So that will save us a few dollars there as well. Well, and here's what we're planning on. So basically, $417,000 for buses, maintenance vehicles, ground maintenance equipment, which we plan to replace next year. It's based on the evergreening schedule. And there is some dollars set aside coming out of the capital reserve for the Crow's Nest Pass land that has been discussed at previous meetings. So how would that impact our reserves? We anticipate that the carryover from this year would increase our unrestricted surplus up to the level of $735,000, and we would use that amount in the upcoming year. We would also take about $513,000 out of operating reserves for schools and instruction, $45,000 out of PO&M reserves, and a net of $496,000 out of capital reserves. And that still provides us with adequate reserve levels. It gets us within the percentage that the Alberta Education would like to see us carry forward, not above the 5%. Currently, we're above the 5%, and the increase from this year would increase that even more. But this will put us down into around the 4% area, which still provides us with adequate operating reserves to transition going forward into future years without bridge funding. So access to that as we transition down. So Trustee Poitras talked about whether we would have bridge funding. It's our intent that we would have the reserves to allow us to transition even though the bridge funding is not there. And that's what we would like to see going forward beyond this year. Of course, this budget is only for this year, but one of the key areas is leaving sufficient operating reserves to be able to accommodate in that transition.
Jeff,
Okay.
can I just ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking about the reserves a lot. And so do we not have to get permission to use our reserves from the government? And so we talk about staff contingency fund being in there and everything like that. So how will that work if we have to ask permission to use it?
So through this budget, we're asking for permission right now. When the budget is approved,
Okay.
we've indicated this is how much access we want to reserves, and they'll come back to us and say yay or nay. There is always a risk when we say it's a contingency because they want to know what we're going to actually use. But I started out this discussion with the uncertainties around next year. There's so many uncertainties that we don't know. We've budgeted our FTE staffing allocation, what we think is appropriate at the time. But in the fall, things can change based on more kids, less kids, that kind of thing. And so we're requesting to have this built into our ability to access reserves now through this budget. We may not entirely use $1.5 million next year, but we may. So instead of having it in the current revenue that we receive, those contingencies have been built into accessing our reserves. So That way, if we don't use them, we're not increasing our surplus, but we're just not using our reserves that we asked to use. So, okay.
Okay, I had a question too, Jeff. I was just wondering, so we send our budget in and then it gets approved, hopefully with these, you know, using our reserves for these things. But as we go forward, you know, we had a really lucky year last year for us with the mild winter, less transportation. We were able to save this money and have the surplus so we can do this. But as we move forward and we're constantly relying on our surplus and they're getting smaller and smaller, is the government seeing these things? Are they highlighted in our budget so that we can go back and say, you know, if you look at our last 3 years, that's what really depleted our budget, was we keep taking money out specifically from our surplus or our reserves to cover these things, and something needs to change, or in 2 years we'll have no revenue or no reserves and also not be able to afford these things. So are they seeing this highlighted every year because they're approving it, and then we can use that as we move forward and are going to have to face some of these constant shortages that we're having?
Yeah, I'm sure that they're reviewing, analyzing, and understanding, you know, the trends that they're seeing within our budgets. The interesting thing is that there's been so much uncertainty and additional funding added here and there that it really doesn't depict where we would be at if they didn't hold us harmless and things of that nature. So when they created the new funding framework, they knew that we were one of the jurisdictions that was receiving over $2 million in bridge funding. They knew that in the next year or two, we would have to transition downward from what we currently were expending. And so that's not new to them. And this budget does identify all that in our the context, in the highlights, assumptions, what we're planning, and the risks. They're very aware of some of the challenges that we're facing and the fact that we understand that we'll be losing funding over time and that we need to accommodate that. But so, yeah, I think to answer your question, this document does bring that to their attention, and I think they're fully aware of it. Does that answer your question, Trustee Poitras?
Yeah, sorry, I was giving you thumbs up. I forgot you're presenting your screen. So yeah, that helps for sure. Thanks, Jeff.
Did I get everything on? Oh, no, I didn't. So again, prepare for the future. No bridge funding, $2 million decrease. We just talked about that. The weighted moving average is likely to decrease, as well as work on this second year of hold harmless is not in place. So the government has indicated that they will hold this year harmless, but those same reduced numbers impact the second and third year on our funding. And they haven't indicated that they're going to hold those years harmless for this anomaly year that we had. So we can anticipate that there will be a slight decrease because of that as well. Again, I spoke to this of maintaining sufficient levels of operating reserves to allow usage for a transition in the following 2 years. And Lacey, your question spoke to that a little bit. I can't remember what I meant by did not record amount, so we'll just move to the next point. Committee set up to prepare for transition into the 2022-2023 year. So we are this year, prior to the end of this year, striking a committee with administrators, senior management, to plan and prepare for not next year, but the following year when bridge funding will not be in place. So we want to look at everything and all things and get some feedback from our administrators. We know what the priorities of the stakeholders and the parents are. The board went and got feedback from them. We understand the value in, you know, those educational assistance supports, the FSL supports, and we want to take all things into consideration and be able to prepare a plan for next year that the board feels comfortable with as we transition downward in the funding that we have available to us. So that is going to be a significant effort going forward in being prepared to do something different. Okay. just some risks associated with this budget. So I've provided the budget document to you basically through these slides and the points that I've addressed in them. Risks associated with this budget, cost fluctuations based on COVID pandemic. Your guess is as good as mine what that impact might be. We've seen some savings, we've seen some higher expenditures. Insurance premiums not known until the fall. That's a risk, right? We anticipate that at least the property insurance, which is our highest and greatest cost of insurance, is flattening out. The market's flattening out. So we hope to see no increases in that area. And if the RMIC boards have a really good year where we don't have huge losses, then it may even have a declining impact on the property of insurance. But the risk is we don't know what that is until the renewal is completed, and that's not till the fall. So it's hard for us to budget. We have budgeted for a flat level. If it's more than that, then we would potentially be looking at where we're at the time, whether we can accommodate that in the budget that we have, or whether we have to go to the minister and see if we can use additional reserves to cover that. But right now we're planning on a flat, no increased insurance premiums in that area. Actual enrollment is significantly different. So based on our projections, if we are down even more than we were in the current year, more students go to the home education versus the at-home learning or in-school attendance, then that has an impact on our future going forward and the potential of a clawback in the following year. Or if more come in rows, then it could potentially benefit us in the following year with additional funding, but that's an uncertainty at this point. Provincial and local staffing settlements, we know that there's ongoing throughout the entire province, not even just in the education sector, potential settlements trying, going forward, negotiations going forward. We currently have one group that we're negotiating with, and what that settlement looks like going forward, we're not sure, and so that could have an impact. Sharp cost increases in fuel, utilities, weather-related activity. If we have a harsher year than we did in the past, then that could have significant impact on our PO&M budget and transportation budgets. But those are some things that just risk associated with that have been built into this document. And that is the budget report. I know you guys were looking forward to way more than that, but that's it. Is there any additional questions that you would like to ask before making a decision?
Does anybody have any questions? I can maybe change my grid here.
Brad's got one. I was like,
Yeah,
I was
go
trying to
ahead.
be quiet.
Go ahead, Brad. Trustee Toon. There you go.
Trustee Portress can't have all the questions. Just a question I know that we get asked a lot when we're doing advocacy and some stakeholders, you hear wild numbers all over the spectrum. What are the actual costs? I know with everything that's happening right now, it isn't on the forefront of discussions, but with the increase in carbon tax, that's something that politically has been discussed out there. What is the actual cost of that? Is that something that you looked at, or is that something that's planned with this new group that has look for efficiencies and things like that? Because that's something that we've tried to tell the government that that's such a hard thing to track with what the exact cost on that is from jurisdiction to jurisdiction and staffing levels to do that. That's a real tough challenge for us.
Well, and yeah, on top of that, we haven't traveled near as much as we have in the past, right? So the total impact of that on fuel and some things, a milder winter, has led to decreased utility expenditures, and if they were higher, it would be a higher impact from the carbon tax as well. So what we've done is we've taken into account, the carbon tax has been in for a little bit, right? And so we've taken into account what the cost level was based on that and projected that forward. So we have taken it into consideration and the costs associated with those areas that might be impacted by the carbon cost. So specifically, do I know the number of what we anticipate the carbon tax cost to be? No. but it's built into our overall cost and what we projected in those areas.
Perfect, thanks. Trustee Poitras, did you have a question? And then Trustee McKee is next.
No, go to Trustee McKee, that's fine.
Okay, Trustee McKee.
Okay. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Perry. Boy, going through, you talk about times of uncertainty, and you did a good job going through that. There's so many things, you know, like you might have an increase there. I know we've had lots of, you know, savings and in a multitude of different positions. So one example is transportation, and you could go through a whole list. Boy, the uncertainty thing, you know, just leaves me just, you know, kind of in a maze. I really do appreciate, you know, you going through that and giving your best analysis possible with what you have to deal with right now. So I certainly thank you for that. I know that the school division has some operating reserves, and I know they're being held, you know, in case things get worse. So I appreciate that as well. So a big thank you to Jeff and of course all your staff that's supporting you as well. You've done a good job on this, and it wasn't easy, but I thank you for doing what you've done. So many thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Trustee McKee. Anthony jumped off the call. I wish he would have heard that because he had a significant role in this budget as well. So I'll pass that on to him, but thank you for that.
Was there any other questions at all for Mr. Perry? We unfortunately lost Trustee Burdett due to internet. Oh, never mind, he's back. Trustee Burdett, do you have a question?
No, but I moved the motion, so I'll say something.
Okay.
No, I too echo the amount of work that went into this budget. I think we're fortunate to have two financial guys in the system that attention to detail and precision is great. I like it. And I would recommend that we support this budget.
Lori, you're muted.
Yeah, I just realized.
But you look
that.
good talking away.
Gotta
Sorry.
do that at least once a day. Okay,
I have
so there's
one.
no other. Oh,
I have just
go
one
ahead.
other question. Sorry.
Right.
Sorry, I didn't know that Jim was like closing, but I was just wondering, Jeff, is it kind of an all or nothing when they approve the budget, or could they approve, like, we approve you to use your reserves for this, but we're not approving this 45,000 of reserves to be used for that? Or is it like, no, it's all, or it's nothing, bring something new back?
You know what, I think, you know, the intent of requesting to the minister access to reserves is just for them to have an understanding of what is going to be used going forward, so that they can, you know, because everything gets amalgamated into their financial reports as well. And so they can speak to that going forward. I don't think it's a, you know, we don't want you to access your reserves, and we think we know better than you as far as what to access. I think it's, you know, I don't know that they'll come back and say all or none or this and that. I think they just want to know. So I anticipate that it will be approved, and we'll be able to go forward that way. They just want us to be accountable for what we say. And I think we have a plan in place with regards to why we have it in there. So,
Right, and just kind of gives them a deeper understanding of what we need those dollars for and where, so that moving forward, like I was talking about earlier, we can say, we've been using reserves for so many years for this. Okay, thanks.
and even just to add to that, I mean, the fact that we're trying to put contingencies through our reserves tells more the story of uncertainty that we're, you know, that this next year could be more, could be less, we're not sure, but we don't want to budget for more and then have a surplus because we didn't expend it. If you build it into reserves, then you just don't use those reserves. It's not like we're increasing our surplus. And I think that's favorable to them. So we'll see.
Awesome, thank you. And thank you for the presentation, the slideshow. It really helps when you're on Zoom to be able to see that and have that presentation while you speak to it. So if there's no other questions, any opposed? Passed. Thank you, guys. Now we're moving on to E3, Education Plan. The Superintendent Seguin will present the school division's education plan for the 2021-2024, outlining the priorities along with the corresponding goals and strategies. The recommendation that the Board of Trustees approve the 3-year education plan for the Livingston Range School Division. This motion is moved by Trustee McKee, and we will, excuse me, turn it over to Mr. Seguin to speak to it, please.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be able to present the education plan to you today. And partly I think that's because I feel that with this plan more than ever before, it really incorporates the most input from stakeholder engagements that we've run. So I'll speak more to that, but I'm excited that, our vision is really starting to come to life, and we see that in the strategies and the outcomes that we've designed and placed in the plan. So we have a new vision, mission, and core values, and we can still say it's new, even though last year we included it too, but it's fairly new. We've had several stakeholder engagements, and I'll talk a little bit more about them as I present the plan to you today. And then what's really exciting too is that this year we will have a new tool to measure our progress in our 3 priority areas of leadership, culture, and academics. So with that, I will share my screen with you and take you through the education plan. All right, so I'm going to start on page 6. And since 2021 will be the first year that all school divisions in the province will move to the assurance model, we've included a small statement explaining what assurance is about. So assurance is focused on demonstrating to our stakeholders and communities that the education system is meeting the needs of students and that students are successful. And we do that, it goes on to say, through stakeholder engagements, ongoing communication, and creating this culture of continuous improvement. And so the public might say, well, what are you providing assurance about? And Alberta Education has identified these 5 areas down here. So student growth and achievement, teaching and learning, or leading, learning supports, governance, and local and societal context. As I mentioned about our new vision, mission, and core values, last year we went through a process to have these created and renewed for the school division. And these foundational statements and core values are embedded throughout this education plan document, and they are infused into the design of the strategies planned for improvement and continuous growth in the school division over the next 3 years. Move on to the next page here. You know this, but for the public, just a really quick overview of our school division. So we have about 3,600 students, and we're spread over a large geographical area in the beautiful corner here of southwestern Alberta. We have 14 schools, 13 colony schools, 4 outreach schools, a virtual school, a summer school, and a home education program as well. We are bordered by 2 First Nations communities, and even though they have their own education systems, some students, some children living on reserve do attend our schools. All right, we're going to skip around a little bit. I know you've had a chance to read through this document in greater detail, so I'll just hit a few of the highlights. I mentioned at the beginning in my opening comments about stakeholder engagement, and I know that this board strongly believes in involving stakeholders in planning and reporting, and our schools are expected to do the following with these bullets: review the data regularly with their school councils, with their staff, with students, annually review and revise the school based education plans. We've just started last year, and so this is an area of ongoing growth, but displaying scoreboards in the school, highlighting school priorities and their progress towards them. And then we've committed to engage regularly with our stakeholders through a new tool that we've been using this year, thought exchange, surveys, or hopefully one day in-person engagement strategies again. So over the last couple of years, the board has held different stakeholder engagements. In March of 2019, the stakeholders were invited to provide some input into budget priorities. And so, to no surprise, some of the feedback that came back in was that the stakeholders value small class sizes. They want a focus on academics with literacy and numeracy in particular, having those classroom supports, high quality teaching in their schools, and a great school culture, as well as supports for mental health. So those were some of the things that came out as feedback from that budget stakeholder engagement. Then in the fall of 2019 and concluded in the spring of 2020, the board engaged the stakeholders around creation of a new vision, mission, and core values. And so that has become foundational to all of our decision making in the school division. And yeah, some schools are saying to me that it's great, and they wish they could have it as their school vision and mission statement. So I think they're aligning their plans so well with the overarching statements of the board and the division here. All right, moving along. This last engagement as well, just this spring, we asked stakeholders, in addition to academic achievement, how would you define success in Livingston Range School Division? And in response to that, our stakeholders gave us three kind of areas. They wanted student engagement, safe and caring schools, and then some life skills focus. And so there's a plan here. I won't click on it now, but you've had a chance to look at that. Is how do we respond to the stakeholder input? And so we've got a plan, and you can see it there when you click on the link, but you will also notice, because we've reviewed it as a board and senior admin, that the strategies that are in that plan are also incorporated into this education plan. All right. Pages 11 and 12 are the different types of data that we use to direction for this plan. In addition to the stakeholder engagements, we also have some data as well, and there's a list of them there. I won't go through all of them. You can see the results of our accountability pillar for our overall summary, and we're doing really well in some areas, and there's other areas that we have to focus on and continue to grow in. So that's these two pages here. This one is our First Nations, Métis, and Inuit students as well. So part of the school division plan is that it must align with Alberta education outcomes as well. And so our three wildly important goals of leadership, culture, and academics, and the strategies associated with them, do incorporate these four areas from Alberta education in their business plan. Number one, Alberta students are successful. Number two, First Nations, Métis, and Inuit students in Alberta are successful. Number three, Alberta has excellent teachers, school leaders, and school authority leaders. And then the last one, Alberta's K-12 education system is well governed and managed. You've seen these before, and so it's a 3-year education plan, although some things will change each year. It needs some tweaking. Some things have finished and new things will be implemented. But our 3 priority areas of leadership, culture, and academics are still the main 3 pillars that we base all of our strategies on, and how we approach our strategies in this education plan. Pages 14 to 20 are a summary of our wildly important goals with their corresponding strategies. But I'm going to skip ahead to about page 20 and show you how these strategies are targeted towards specific improvement strategies based on the data. So if you get sick here, you might want to just turn away from the screen for a minute. Let me scroll down to the next area that I'll focus on. All right, so this is where you'll see a little bit more of the alignment piece. So here we have some of the data. In many areas in Livingston Range School Division, we're doing well compared to the provincial averages. However, in the academic achievement, that's an area that we're a bit behind the provincial averages. And so we have specific strategies that we want to incorporate in this education plan to help improve in those areas. And so they're listed here under key strategies for continued success and improvement. I won't go through every single bullet, but you've had a chance to look at them. There are some things like the enhanced learning model and Rock the Diploma that we had just got started before COVID. And we saw a really great success with that, with our kids writing diploma exams. And so we're going to continue to offer that. A few new things that we're looking at is we're really putting an emphasis on our schools, trying to make a concerted effort to involve parents even more than they have been. Students being involved more in understanding how to set achievable goals and then working towards them, and giving students an opportunity for student voice and leadership. As I mentioned to you in previous meetings, our school-based administration and school-based teams this year are really focusing heavily on a professional development series around collaborative response. And so this is basically collaborative meetings of staff trying to take a look at different pieces of data and ensure that all of our students are experiencing success. We will continue with the mentorship programs that we've got in place. Those are really good for any new staff or new leaders that come into our school division. This area with our ECS data is something that's new to you. You probably haven't seen this too much in our education plan before, but I know that Lisa has shared the information with you at various times as she's talked about the early learning programs in our school division. But when kids are getting ready to enter kindergarten ECS, there's a readiness kind of tool that we try to have the kids go through. and gives us a better understanding of where they're at. And so there's the ITA and then the IDA data. And you can see in there that there are some students that are struggling even at a very early age. And so we want to give our young learners every opportunity to experience success and to get them started off really good and with a great start. And so Lisa and then Sandy Harrower, our early learning coordinator, have come up with a plan to implement a full-time ECS option for kindergarten age children in Nanton. And so this will give those learners an early or more exposure to literacy, play and leadership opportunities in a multi-aged environment. So there was a survey done in Nanton, and there's great interest from the community to support this. It's not mandatory that every child has full-day kindergarten, but for those that want to, there's that option available to them. And then the second bullet there, the implementation of an early learning program at Horace Allen and A.B. Daly to ensure our youngest learners are provided with enriching play-based learning experiences. So these are 3 and 4-year-olds. And so we're working with those schools, and they're very excited to start these programs and to get an opportunity to get to know those children earlier and to give them that rich, environment where they can continue to learn and grow. One area under student growth and achievement that we've worked on over the last several years is trying to incorporate more programs, courses for our kids so that we broaden the range of programs. We've had, if you look at 2016, we were 72.9 and the province was 81. So we had a little bit of a gap there. And over the years, you can see 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, we're doing better, but we still have a little bit of a gap there. So we've been wrestling with how do we, in a rural school division, provide our students with the same opportunities that they would maybe get in larger centers. And so we've been doing a number of creative things in our schools, but we've got some strategies here that we will continue to implement over the next couple of years to increase the breadth of programming for our students. So we've heard a lot about the Pursuits programming. That's going to, well, we went more robust into it this year out of necessity, with the pandemic. We've got a robust virtual school happening. And with our division principal overseeing that now, that will continue into next year. We've been able to start a summer school for our students to access other courses in the summer. The home education program went, as Jeff mentioned, from 25 kids to over 100 this year. Work readiness certifications are being brought in.
Daryl?
Yep.
The other day I had someone ask me, and I talked to him about it a little bit, but maybe just while you're sharing on this, would you just explain the difference between virtual school students and homeschooling education students, just so that that people understand what those two things look like and that we do offer both in our division?
Sure, you bet, because both virtual students and home education students are learning from their home. The difference, I guess, in a short way to describe it might be who's in charge of the program. So in the virtual school, the students are taught by LRSD teachers, and the teacher oversees the instruction and the assessment and the reporting. In a home education program, the parent is the one directing the program. We are a link and try to remove barriers and help them along the way, but it's really the parent that's providing the program. So hopefully that helps make that distinction.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks so much. It's just so great that we are able to provide both, and that, as we've gone through the pandemic and stuff, our online, our virtual school has gotten even larger, and it's just doing so wonderfully, as well as homeschool. So I'm so glad we have both here and can offer that.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to have options, right? We know that most kids learn best in person, but some kids are very independent and can learn well in a virtual environment. And so if that's their choice, it's nice that we're able to continue to offer that. One thing that Richard and Chad have been doing, working with our principals this year to coordinate timetables. So in particular, coordinate high school timetables, allowing our students greater access to a broader range of courses. So, maybe in a particular school in our school division, there's only 3 kids that want, Math 31. And so normally a school couldn't offer that. But by coordinating the timetables across the division, students can virtually connect. And we've shown that we've got great strategies to make that happen this year, and it can still be really effective. So they could virtually connect with another school who has that course operating at that same time and be able to access that course. So that's just one example. The dual credit opportunities will continue. We're going to expand the virtual school offerings, including second languages. So students will have a chance more than ever in Livingston Range to pick up, maybe a class in French or Spanish, perhaps. Wherever there's interest, we'll try to accommodate their needs. Chad has been working with, through his innovation kind of portfolio, with a couple of the principals, and Willow Creek Composite would like to start a flight school. So that's something that we'll start to work on a little bit more and start to have that flush out over the next few years, as well as a firefighting program in Granham. All right, I think I'll just pause for a second. Any questions around that area of student growth and achievement? Okay, I don't hear anyone, so I'm going to continue on. So these areas are showing our results for our First Nations, Métis, and Inuit students. And we know that there's a gap, there for sure. And so we've been working hard over the years, and we've got a lot of great things happening in our school division, but we really want to focus on trying to close that academic gap as well. So Sandra will continue to work with our teachers and build their capacity and understanding of the history and legacy of residential schools. So that will continue. we've had really great success with incorporating the work of some of the elders in our schools. And so every school in our division will have access to elder support if needed, but in particular, schools in Pincher Creek and Fort Macleod. We will, we've had the land-based education program ready and on hold, unfortunately, due to the pandemic. The last couple of years, we're really hopeful that in the spring of 2022, that it will launch, and that will be a great outdoor learning experience for many of our students. We've also looked at some of our funding and figured out a way that we can hire a First Nations, Métis, and Inuit success coach, grad coach. We haven't really finalized what that title will be called yet, but it's really, the position will really be focused on removing barriers and helping our First Nations, Métis, and Inuit students succeed more academically and increase graduation rates. Lisa Furukawa, our Director of Learning, has worked over the last couple of years to secure Shelley Moore to work with our school division on a Leadership in Inclusion learning series. So Shelley has been contracted with, who will work with us, I think 6 days next year. There'll be a kickoff in August where the whole school division will be able to listen in as Shelley connects with our school division. And then 5 other times where 3 leaders from each school, so when I say leaders, it's the school-based team, not just administrators, will be able to be the lead learners in inclusion and then transfer that learning to their staff throughout the year. I'll just move down a little bit. Around survey measures for citizenship and academic achievement. So in these areas, we're pretty close now to provincial averages, with parents who agree that students are taught attitudes and behaviors that will help them be successful when they finish school and have the attitudes, knowledge, and skills necessary for lifelong learning. So we'll continue to have our career practitioners, our off-campus teachers, and then you can see in this section here where parents have identified in the stakeholder engagement about student success. That stakeholder engagement themed it around something called life skills. In working with a group of our administrators, you know, while they understand the intent of it, they wanted something a little more, maybe more modern, I guess, in terms of the language we used around life skills. And so they've called it the 21st century knowledge, skills, and attributes. And so as schools work with their option courses or complementary courses, it could be those typical things like foods or, you know, sewing, cooking, that sort of thing, but it could go into other life competencies as well that they'll work with the kids and help identify. Livingston leaders, this you'll hear from this group this afternoon. This is our former Regional Council of Student Leaders. And so they've rebranded themselves. And so we'll continue to have that group running where they're taught leadership principles and student voice is heard. So that will carry on. Around the areas of learning support, this is actually a strength for Livingston Range School Division. We are just slightly above provincial average in these areas around safe and caring, student inclusion, and access to supports and services. But you'll notice in here that, and this is pre-pandemic information, our grade 4 and up students are experiencing higher, you know, moderate to higher levels of anxiety than the national norms. And so we're mindful of that, and we want to, in our strategies, continue with the increased FSL time in our schools, so the counselor time in our schools. And we're trying to allow the counselors more time to get into the classrooms to do classroom presentations. And it's listed there, a few of the areas that they would focus on for those classroom presentations. Student voice, working on character education or other types of plans with our students, and learning how to have coping strategies and take care of their mental health as well as their physical health. All right, I'm going to skip down a little bit to the last area on governance. So this is the fifth of the 5 areas of or domains of assurance. And in here, this focuses on parent satisfaction with parental involvement in decisions about their children's education, and number of parents and teachers and students satisfied that their school and school jurisdictions have improved or stayed the same in the last 3 years. So I know that the board is committed to conduct further stakeholder engagements and listen to its stakeholders. We will be making a more concerted effort to involve parents in meaningful ways. So every school will look at what they do currently and think about the ways they can meaningfully involve parents more. And all schools will foster strong working relationships with their school councils. And hopefully we can get back to meeting in person, at least occasionally. I think there's been some lessons learned, and perhaps at times some school council meetings being held virtually has proven to be actually increased parental attendance at those meetings. That flexibility helps them out. So every school will have to look at their context and figure that out. And then I think this last bullet is really important to include in here as well, that the school division, the board of trustees are committed to continue to allocate resources to support priority areas. That alignment piece, if we have strategies, we need to have our resources aligned to make sure that those strategies can be achievable. We'll just wrap it up here real quick and then open it up to any other questions. Jeff, I think John and Jim both expressed their gratitude. I just want you to know too that this time of the year, there's a couple times of the year where Jeff and Anthony spend a crazy amount of time in this building and working on the budget and everything. And it's great to have men of integrity like they are and so detailed and hardworking. I know they put in long hours, so I just want to thank them for their efforts on a tough budget year as well. And then the last piece in our education plan is a link to the IMR and the capital plans. And so JT Foster is still the #1 priority on the board's list for modernization, as well as then second, Livingston School, and third, Canyon. So with that, I will stop sharing the screen and see if there's any questions on our education plan.
Does anybody have any questions at all?
I was just wondering, it will be on our website, right? People can go and click the link up there to find it.
Yeah, awesome. Good question. So if the board approves the plan today, we'll take the draft off there. We'll send it to Alberta Education, and then we will get it posted on the website. Yeah.
Trustee McKee?
Oh, okay, we're going.
Yep, you're good.
Okay, Superintendent, see, when you talked about man of integrity doing the budget, well, I would like to continue the men of integrity who put together this educational plan. I'm really impressed by it. You and your staff put a lot of time into this. It covers, the school division's priorities, and you have brought goals and strategies to achieve these. You go through innumerable aspects of the school vision, and you're moving in a very positive direction as well. So I certainly thank you and your the men of integrity who helped put together this education plan as well.
Thanks so much, John. And I would add, I know you meant this, the women of integrity too, that we have a lot of the ladies who've also contributed to this plan. It sure has come about because of a team effort. And I'm just constantly amazed and so grateful to work with such a wonderful team. Even during a pandemic, with all of this other stuff that's happening, they were able to take the stakeholder engagements that the board has conducted this year and listen to you as you've explained kind of the vision that you have for the school division and every student every day as well. Take that along with the Alberta education outcomes, the budget that we're provided, And I think they've been able to do a really good job of putting it all together in this plan. I'm really excited about the future and where we're headed as a school division. So thank you.
Yes, you're quite correct. I certainly meant the men and women who are part of your group as well. So yeah, let's not forget that the women would certainly help out and play a big role as well. So yeah, I thank them as well.
We knew that's what you meant,
Yeah.
Trustee McKee. We have Trustee Toon.
Yeah, just a big ditto to what Trustee McKee said. Being on the board for a few years now, it's just amazing at how every year, especially during the pandemic, that we just continue to grow and achieve things that I didn't think that was possible. So I just want to thank you, Daryl, and your staff for all that you do. And it really struck me when you were going through the presentation and seeing it before, that the common thread that runs through it all, it really feels like the whole plan is cohesive and that everything is supporting each other. It's not we're not doing one-off fad programs. We're really doing things that are solid and support the staff and students in this division, and just really proud to be here to witness it firsthand.
Thank you. Trustee Yegas?
Yes, and I'd like to reiterate what Trustee Toon said. When you were going through this, I was thinking, in this time into adversity in the last year and a half, we have the board, central office, the whole division has been able to go ahead and do so much for students that's planning for the future. And it's really indicated in this plan here what you can do. So, the things that the students are going to be able to have in the future are going to really be great in terms of their educational ability. I think you've really hit right on to our vision, mission, and values. Thank you.
Was there anything else anybody had a comment on? I just want to say, I don't know, not all of you will remember the old education plans. They were just very cut and dry, cut and paste. They were not personable. They were not who we were as Livingston Range. And now that we are able to make this education plan ours, and it's a living document for us to go by, and then we submit it to Alberta Ed, it's so much better than it ever used to be. So yeah, so much better. So with that, the recommendation on the floor is that the Board of Trustees approve the 3-year education plan for the Livingston Range School Division. Any opposed? Seeing none, passed. Did the cat say it was okay, Clara? Perfect. Moving on to E4, professional development funds. Trustee Toon will discuss the 2021-2022 board PD budget with the Board of Trustees. Recommendation that the Board of Trustees set the board PD budget for the 2021-2022 school year to the amount of the previous year plus any unused amounts from the 2020-2021 budget. Trustee Toon has made this motion. Would you like to speak to it?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. It was highlighted earlier, the amazing job Trustee Yegas does keeping us informed of everything that's going on in the world of professional development, and that this year there's been different, as we know, as typical years. The travel hasn't been there, and we've gotten accustomed to joining PD in our PJs, which might be a hard thing to get away from going forward. But I think we've all experienced some really neat areas of growth this past year. But in doing that, there's been some significant savings, and we've had discussions about it earlier, and this here helps formalize those to help set up the future board for success by making sure that they have all the resources that they can use at their disposal and need to do so. So this would help provide them with additional PD dollars, because we know that the first year of a board is always the key and most crucial one, and also the most expensive to do the work in, because the additional training and the costs of bringing in facilitators or using staff in-house and the additional meetings. the cost of them themselves to do that. So I'd ask for your consideration today that you support setting our future board for success after the election, that they have what they need to do their work and have as much success as we have the past 4 years.
Thank you. Trustee Yegas?
I totally support this motion by Trustee Toon. I think one of the things I've found, and I hope others have found too, is that we always do not have to meet in person. I know it's great, but it's also very expensive. And I hope in the future that not only the Board of Trustees and Central Office, but also other groups that are having conferences or conventions look at the factor of doing things online if possible, because it is less expensive. And I think for some people, sometimes you get more out of it. And as I said, maybe meeting in person you're getting, and the networking might be, but not all the time. As I said, I think you got to balance it. So I hope you all look forward to balancing it in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Yegas. Trustee Burdette?
Yeah, I guess I have a question. So we're talking about rolling forward what's left of this year. So is this a one-time roll forward and then they would revert to their regular budget if they don't use all of this up? So next year they use whatever it is plus this, and the next year they would be back to their regular budget for PD?
Trustee Toon, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, that would be the intent. The reason why we need approval for this, because otherwise it would just go into regular reserves, and then we need ministerial approval to access that. So in doing this, it sets the budget amount at that dollar amount and gives us the division for the future flexibility there. And yeah, then they would have to make whatever decisions they would need to have future amounts set. But yeah, this doesn't change the number for any other years.
Okay. Is there any other questions? Okay, seeing none, the recommendation on the floor that the Board of Trustees set the board PD budget for the 2021-2022 school year to the amount of the previous year plus any unused amounts from the 2020-2021 budget. Any opposed? Seeing none. Thank you. Moving on to E5 Ad Hoc Committee. In response to the March 16th, 2021 board motion number 2117, Trustee Yegas moved that the Board of Trustees review the Grand Prairie Public Development Method of Accountability and present the adapted model at a future meeting. Trustee Poitras will discuss the possibility of an ad hoc committee. Recommendation that the Board of Trustees approve the creation of an ad hoc committee to discuss, explore, and present to the board the benefits and implementable portions of the Grand Prairie Public Development Method of Accountability. Trustee Poitras, would you like to speak to that?
Yes. So this is something we all saw, a presentation, a fantastic presentation from Grand Prairie, and we discussed maybe being able to implement some different parts of it into our division. What could we learn from it? What could we put hand in hand with what we already have in place? And we wanted to kind of go through it and pull out some of the things we thought would be great for our division. And somehow in that discussion, we kind of had one of our trustees look at it and bring some stuff back. And when we discussed it, we thought we need this to be a more fulsome conversation. And so I thought, what if we had an ad hoc committee that we had go through this together as a group, look at what we're currently doing, what they're currently doing, and how to partner those two things together. Also look at the possibility of having the presenter join with us. He said he'd be happy to join with us for 30 or 40 minutes or an hour, free of charge, to pick his brain about how we could piece those our current and what they're doing together to be the best that it could possibly be. So after a little bit of discussion and I thought, what if we had an ad hoc committee rather than everyone kind of looking at it and thinking about it and never really moving forward? So that was my thoughts, and I'd love to hear what everyone else thinks.
Thank you, Trustee Poitras. Any questions around the ad hoc committee creation? I just have a quick question. Usually there's a start and end time, and so we just need to maybe establish that into the motion.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if no one has questions, does anyone have recommendations on a timeline? So, but I see John has a question now also.
Yeah, Trustee McKee, did you want to have a question? And then we will amend that timeline. You're muted, Trustee McKee.
There we go.
There you go.
I'm going to be a little bit frank on this. I think that presentation was good for the accountability of the Grand Prairie Public School. And I think that that the presentation that we just had on our education plan is an excellent a plan for the accountability of the Livingston Range School Division. So I myself, I think this ad hoc committee is somewhat redundant since we just had an excellent education plan presentation to us that I think covers the accountability that is necessary for our own school division. That's my thoughts.
Okay, thank you, Trustee McKee. We have Trustee Yegas next.
I agree with the idea with what Trustee McKee said in terms of what's in our education plan, that we do have a lot of good measures and everything else, but I guess we have to look at the fact that, we could always improve. It doesn't matter where we are, we can always improve. So we could take this, look at it. Maybe if the ad hoc committee might not want to have anything that they want to do, but there's always room for improvement with this. So yeah, I do agree with that we could go ahead and do this. I think the ad hoc committee could be starting now and giving their presentation maybe in September. I think we do have to have a date, and I think it has to be within this area, this time of the school division, because you never know who's going to be on the board next or not. So I think we'll have to put, those would be the good dates or the good times.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Yegas. Trustee Toon.
Thank you. I agree with Trustee Yegas. This doesn't take anything away from what we just saw or had a presentation come forward. That was something amazing, and I think it's just looking about how are there any other ways that benchmarks that we as a board can use to show that we are getting better, or to focus and look at. I agree with the September timeframe. I think that's good because we can glean the knowledge and experience from the current board, and then have something to for the new board to look at, and then they can decide if they want the ad hoc committee to go on further, because time-wise they would still have a lot of time to implement it before their evaluation process begins. So I like it, and I'm supportive of the motion.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Toon. Trustee Burdette.
Yeah, if I remember the presentation, I mean, it was more for the boards to be able to track their own improvement. And like we have excellent administration, and they do an excellent job of everything they do. I think there might be some things in this plan that would help us track and future boards track their progress without probably putting too much weight on administration. for extra work. And so in that vein, I don't think it would hurt to have a ad hoc committee look at it and see how things could work. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Trustee Burdette. As the mover of the motion, Trustee Poitras, I'm just going to see if there's anybody else who would like to speak, and then I'll let you speak. Is there any other questions or comments? I do think we also need to amend the motion to have the start of the May 2021, September 2021, and we also need to establish how many members will be on the ad hoc committee.
So I would consider that a friendly amendment to add starting now and ending like with a final presentation to be given at the September board meeting. And I would think my suggestion would be 3 members.
Okay, Trustee Toon.
No, Brad, you don't have to fight me on it. Just be 3.
No fighting. Can we do 2 and the chair? To ensure that the process includes the chair in those discussions.
The chair is, sorry. I'm sorry.
I guess.
The chair belongs to all.
I know.
As ad hoc, so.
I know ex officio, but the problem is if you have 3 and the chair as ex officio, then it's the majority of the board. So if you do 2 and the chair, then our numbers are less than half of the board.
Okay, could I just, may I speak, Lord?
Yes, please.
Madam Chair, there is 3 plus the chair on other committees, so it does happen.
But should it? Is that something that we need to look at? Okay.
So right now we have a friendly amendment on the floor. We just need to decide as a board how many members we would like to join. I see Trustee Burdette has his hand up.
Yeah, I would support 2 in the chair. That's where I think we should go with that.
Thank you, Trustee Burdette. Trustee Yegas, did I see your hand up, or you're muted, so I can't hear you, sorry.
Not right now, Howell.
Okay, so right now we have a amended motion on the floor. I will just read it back so that everybody has the same understanding. That the Board of Trustees approve the creation of an ad hoc committee to discuss, explore, and present to the board the benefits and implementable portions of the Grand Prairie Public Method of Accountability starting May 2021 and to be presented at the board meeting in September of 2021 with 2 members and the chair as the committee.
Maybe Lori just put that at the beginning, like an ad hoc committee consisting of the board chair and 2 additional members, and then the rest of it. So it's not tagged on at the end. It might just flow better.
Okay. Nikki, do you have that, or did we confuse you all?
Nikki, you always have it together. You're so together.
Sometimes we make it hard, I think.
So do you want me to close or do you want to see it first?
No, we'll just wait till we see it so that we can just make sure that it's correct, and then I'll.
Okay.
All right, so the Board of Trustees approved the creation of an ad hoc committee consisting of the board chair and 2 members to discuss, explore, present to the board the benefits. You're going to make me say this word 1,000 times here. implementable portions of the Grand Prairie Public developed method of accountability starting May 2021, concluding with a presentation at the September board meeting. There we go. So you consider that a friendly amendment, Trustee Poitras? Okay. Any other questions or comments before we close? Trustee Poitras, would you like to close the motion?
Yep. Okay, so I think this is great. I think we could get a lot from it. I, like John, when we first were attending the presentation, I was like, listen, we already rock in Livingston Range. Like, you can't be doing it better than us. But one thing that I like is that it was more for the trustees. And as a group of trustees and a board together, we are the ones who hold ourselves accountable. And that's what I liked, is kind of the checks and balances that puts into place for us as trustees to make sure that we are staying focused, staying on task, and doing what we need to do to be the best governance in our, in our area, the local voice, and to be, an asset to our school division. So that's what I loved about it. That's why I thought this ad hoc committee would be so great. And, I think it would be really beneficial if we decided to go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Any opposed? Passed. I do believe now that we need to decide who's going to be on that committee. So we will need to have just a separate motion. And so anybody interested in signing up to be on the committee, we have 2 trustees. So we have Trustee Poitras, Trustee Toon, and Trustee Yeagas. Right? Yeah. And nobody else? All right, because we can't do this via ballots, I guess the best way would be for everyone to vote to send their responses to just Nikki. And then she will then respond back to me who the 2 trustees are. So I would just like to get...
Sorry, Lori, do you mean like go in the chat box and send a private message to Nikki with the 2 names that you're in favor of? Okay.
Yeah, so if you go in the chat box and click on the everyone, you can select just Nikki. Trustee Toon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could we all just say why we're interested in
I was going to get to that, yeah, but I just want to make sure everybody knows how to vote.
Yeah, I didn't know.
Yeah,
Thanks.
it's okay. No worries. I just want to make sure everybody knows how to vote. So you just click on the everyone in the chat box and you can just select Nikki's name. So I'm just going to give everybody just a brief chance to speak to why you'd like to be on this committee. And we'll start with Trustee Poitras.
I would like to be on this committee because when I first started watching the presentation, I was, like I said, not really sure. And the more I saw it and understood more what it was, I just thought it could be so beneficial. I think I could learn and grow a lot from seeing the presentation and going through it with a fine-tooth comb as a trustee, since I am a newer trustee, or this was just my first term. So that's why I would love to go through it again. And I think that as we're moving forward and we're going to implement it, we don't know who will be here, but I'm planning on running again. And hopefully a few of us who are part of this process will be here to help. We've really gone through it. We really understand it. We'll do the presentation and then help implement it. And so hopefully I can be here to be a part of that process.
Thank you, Trustee Poitras. Trustee Toon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would love for the opportunity to be on the committee. This is something that I've really been a huge cheerleader of since hearing about it at other committees and other things that I'm on. This is the 3rd time that I've been able to see the presentation, and I really think that the board focusing on accountability to itself and the public is one of the most important things that we do as trustees. So I think that this is a huge opportunity, and I also am planning on running again in the next election. So having board members that potentially could help share their experience with this, I think would be a key asset as well. But really appreciate the opportunity to serve on this.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Toon. Trustee Yegas.
I'd like to sit on this committee because I was the one who went through the thing, through the information and that. And
Busy.
prepared, and I know it was, maybe it wasn't what was expected, but I feel that I got a lot of information out of that because I really dug into it. I went to Grand Prairie and saw what the website and everything and looked at that. I did a lot of research into what it was. There's questions I would have, and working with I can't remember his name would be really great. I don't think whether we're going to run again or not has much to do with sitting on this committee, because we never know what's going to happen in an election. So, but I would really like, as I said, for the reason that I have done a lot of background information and research, I would like to sit on this committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Yegas. Now, if everyone could please just send their votes to Nikki in the chat box, that would be great.
And should we have a 5-minute break while we send them? So I could.
Yes, we will take a 5-minute bio break while we send them to Nikki.
And they should be voting for 2 people.
Yeah,
Thank
you're
you.
voting for 2 people, so please send in 2 names. everyone's back, just turn your cameras on so that we can start back up again.
That wasn't 5 minutes. I don't know what clock you're looking at.
That was my 5 minutes. We're running behind.
That was a fast 5 minutes.
We know I hate running behind. And we have a scheduled
started early, so how can we be running behind?
Well, we have a scheduled presentation at 3:15, so I don't want to make them wait.
Break out the cattle prod.
Mm-hmm. Can't do that through Zoom. Wish there was a button that you could just push. John and Clara, are you back yet? Okay, I'm just waiting for Clara. Okay, perfect. So thanks for the little bit of a break. We have our, we have Trustee Toon and Trustee Yegas as committee members. So the recommendation is that the Board of Trustees approve and appoint Trustee Toon and Trustee Yegas along with the board chair to the Method of Accountability Ad Hoc Committee. Does that sound good? Okay, can I get someone to make that motion, please? Trustee Poitras? Any questions? Okay, any opposed? Passed. Thank you. Moving on to E6, adjusted school week. In response to the February 16th, 2021 board motion number 2099, Trustee Toon moved that the Board of Trustees explore the option of moving to full day Fridays to better support staff, students, and families, with the results being presented no later than September 2021 board meeting. Trustee Poitras will discuss the lack of interest shown through the adjusted school week survey results. The recommendation number 1 for full Fridays, that the Board of Trustees cease any further exploration of a 5-day school week due to the lack of interest shown through the adjusted school week survey results. Trustee Poitras, did you want to speak to the first recommendation?
There was little to no interest shown in our survey, so I think pursuing it would be a waste of time and resources.
Okay, any questions? Okay, seeing none. The recommendation number 1 on the floor, any opposed? Passed. Okay, recommendation number 2 for the 4-day school week, that the Board of Trustees cease any further exploration of the February 16th, 2021 motion number 20-100. Trustee Poitras moved that the Board of Trustees explore the option of moving students to a 4-day school week running Monday to Thursday to better support students and staff mental health, with the results presented no later than September 2021 board meeting, and continue exploring the 4-day school week with the April 20th, 2021 motion number 20-128. Trustee Poitras Move that the administration explore the options of moving students to a 4-day school week to better support student and staff mental health, with the results being presented to the board at the September 2021 board meeting. Trustee Poitras, would you like to speak to that as the mover of the motion?
Yeah, so this one's just a clarification. The original motion said that we were looking at a 4-day school week with students not attending school on Fridays. Now with the new motion, we will have administration bring forward what it would look like to have kids going to school 4 days a week, and occasionally on Fridays if maybe there wasn't school on a Monday or a holiday or something. So this motion is just to get rid of the first motion and move in support of the new motion. Yeah.
Sorry, any questions? Okay. Oh, Trustee McKee.
Since the board has agreed to move forward with this motion, I'm in favor of it. I certainly think if you're going to move forward, you should at least explore all the options. So I think it's a good motion. I have a little concern, and perhaps someone can explain to me. I mean, you sent out a written handout about exploring a 4-day school week, talking about your instructional hours and class lengths and bus schedules and all these. The term like mental health. What do you envision that aspect being? Like, what would you want to know about the mental health aspect of it?
So Trustee McKee, right now this motion is only to cease the motion of the previous motion. The other motion just exists. So the conversation it has to be around the motion ceasing from the previous motion.
Okay.
So did you have any questions around that?
No.
Okay. So is there any questions around the motion ceasing to further explore the February 16th motion? Okay, seeing none then. Any opposed? That's passed. Sorry, Trustee McKee, maybe that's just, we can have that conversation at a later date and then we can seek clarity.
Okay.
Thank you. Moving on to E7, professional learning. Time will be provided for trustees to seek approval for board or professional learning events. Was there any trustees wanting to seek any approval for any PD sessions coming up? Okay, seeing none. So F1 has now been moved to our June board meeting. So we're on to F2, Awards Committee. Awards Committee will update the Board of Trustees on celebration and awards throughout the division. Just wanted to give you an update on the awards. I've been working with Nikki, Nikki's been working a lot, just trying to get everybody, all the art pictures done and stuff. And so we will actually have a video very shortly here to show you. I do believe that we still have all our bursaries and our other, oh my gosh, Daryl, help me out here.
Scholarships and awards.
Scholarships, thank you. We're still coming through, and we've got all the schools hopefully sending in kids' names so that we will have an opportunity to go through those and be able to pick some winners. Was there anything else that Trustee Toon that you wanted to add to it, or Mr. Siegler? Nope. Okay, so that was just a short, sweet update. But the video for our award, our art gala will be coming out right soon. Trustee Yegas?
Yeah, we usually have an award this time of year, and I can't remember what's our local one. The superintendent, we named it after a superintendent.
Edwin Parr? Oh, no, Lloyd Cavers.
Lloyd Cavers. What's going to happen with the Lloyd Cavers this year?
Still on the go.
Yeah.
Nikki, I believe, sent out the information to the high schools, so I can't remember what the deadline is, but it's still happening. Oh, but you mean like in person or not?
No, I just mean that this is the middle of May and we're running out of time. I was just wondering if we're going to do it or so you're just going to select somebody and then just make an announcement, or are we going to do any kind of I mean, it's going to have to be virtual, of course, but
I think last time we just created a video and we had Dr. Lloyd Cavers actually speak on the video, saying the presentation, and we announced the nominees. We also had the Honoring Spirit Award along with that. And so I think that in light of COVID, because we just can't do much of anything else, that if we have some nominees come forward, then a video will just be created and it can be shared at the school level, is what I'm assuming. Okay, any other questions? Okay, perfect, thank you. On to F3 technology presentation. Chad Kuzik, Associate Superintendent, Curriculum and Innovations, will present a technology innovation presentation to the Board of Trustees. Thank you, Chad.
Can you see this right now, board meeting?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, good. So I'll present this real quick. So I just want to give you a quick update on what's taking place with technology this year based on everything that's taken place. The continuity of learning and tech has consumed most of our time. So we looked at the re-entry process and the re-entry planning and what took place this year, and I'll give you an idea of what we were working on, and very proud of our team as we work forward in this. So there was an increase of collection of LRC teacher developed content for the use of APARA and the enhanced learning model, as well as Google shared resources. We continue to work through that with our virtual school and people that were able to contribute. We built our resources to be able to provide that for teachers for at-home learning. We spent some time doing lots of research and understanding what the cleaning procedures of computers. We got that together and sent that out to all the schools to make sure that was taking place. The development of My Learning Livingston Range website, that continued on. That gives resources to teachers to teach at home if they needed to, and also allowed us, the virtual school, to have a bank of resources to use. So as a team, we continued to do that. We continued to run the curriculum support team. That was an email that teachers could email us if they needed support, whether it be technical or pedagogy or curriculum. And so that existed, and it was distributed to the right people to help those teachers in place. We developed strategies to consider in a blended at-home learning setting, again, to prepare for this year, but also we continue to offer that throughout to ensure that there were some strategies that were there to support teachers as they're working from home. And regarding the processes, we began to, the lending and collection of Chromebooks was a big part of that. We had this is ballpark please, but 800 devices were sent out, and happy to say, they were all returned. So the process of doing that took a little time and understanding, but I think it was successful. We also developed the agreement of the use document for that, which is important because the students were at home, and we had we couldn't be actively engaged in their use of that. So we had to make sure that everybody was familiar with what was expected when we sent those devices home. And again, I think it was very successful. So implementation of classroom cameras to deliver programming students at home. Again, this is only in those certain parts, but we were getting ready. I mean, we only went at home learning in a couple instances, but for most of the year, we're getting ready just in case. And so again, we're making sure that some of those classrooms, especially when students were maybe only half the class was sent home, and for COVID responses and things of that nature, we had to get set up to allow the teacher to be able to teach from their classroom. So things like camera and audio were all adjusted based on the requests that came in. So we spent a lot of time making sure that was there. Acquisition, training, and communication with software such as GoFormative, APARA, and Seesaw. These are things that we sent out in preparation for a blended learning environment, or at least having a lot of those resources digital just in case. So the support and the training of that was again essential to make sure that most of the people were using it. And Seesaw, we really did see it. It's just a digital portfolio piece of software. However, they've used that for almost their landing space for K to 6 students, and we'll continue that on for next year. And Apara is, again, most of our virtual schools using it. Most of our high schools are using this in depth to deliver digital content to students. And finally, technical support to launch LRC Pursuits, the virtual school. As you know, we've discussed it quite a bit, and you still see some discussions of it today. But we had to spend some time and resources to ensure that they were ready to go and deliver the content that need be from teachers to students. So that's some of the stuff we did for the continuity of learning. As far as infrastructure, we looked at Wi-Fi. As we worked through that, we did an analysis of our Wi-Fi throughout our buildings and identified some of our access points. That's the receiver of the Wi-Fi needed to be upgraded. And we'll be doing that this summer, and from December probably till next December, we'll continue to do this. Why? We're finding that as schools evergreen and have more Chromebooks, there's a greater need for access to those Wi-Fi spots. So again, resources, time, and energy will be spent there to upgrade that across the division for this year. Instructional spaces as well, to continue down that path of evergreening those instructional spaces. Well, we did analysis of the technology that needed to deliver programming now and in the future. And so you'll see more installation of interactive boards. We do have an evergreening cycle for that, but we'll continue to do that to allow some of that content to be captured in the programming and for the pedagogies that teachers are using. And installation of audio video technology based on, again, evergreening. We do have an evergreening cycle for this, but again, the need for that is demonstrated through this last year. So prepare for now and in the future, we'll continue to work on that. And again, those evergreening conversations we did have very much, again, is based on, well, now and in the future, what that'll look like for our schools. We have 4 schools evergreening this year. We spent some time with the principals to identify, and the committees they may or may not have, identified their needs. And believe it or not, ordering technology right now is very difficult to get those Chromebooks. Again, proud of our team to acquire the needed technology for evergreening per se for next year. So we ordered this through our Southern Alberta Consortium. And again, got reasonable pricing on that and timely delivery of that. So our kids will be, and our staff and students will be prepared for next year. And yeah, just the installation of this technology into the schools through that evergreening. We'll spend most of the summer as best we can getting ready to make sure some of those things that I mentioned before were available to everyone to be able to access the technology, deliver content, whether it be in school or remote. Again, we always focus everything back to the learning technology policy framework, and which is identified in some of our school plans, in which you saw the education plans. So again, we're going to increase student access to technology as best we can inside our buildings, and potentially outside to have different devices that students may or may not be able to take home. So we're going to work through that. Increase student access to alternative program, again, a focus on technology, and our team will be able to support LRC Pursuits to make sure that they can deliver the content needed. Monitor student progress through a variety of evidence. I put that as we go through our assessment and looking at assessment as new curriculum is coming and evaluating how we assess students and what ways would be most appropriate. We'll be looking at that. And I use the word seesaw, but there's other digital software companies where we're looking at ways in which we can really know where the students are at in their learning journey. So EdSP is one of those as well that wasn't on this list. Identify alignment and the use of technology in the draft curriculum. Again, as we talked about, we talked about our last meeting, draft curriculum we'll be definitely looking at in September, working through identifying where the integration technology is needed and the resources and potentially the infrastructure is needed to support that. As you've heard, we'll be implementing a new SIS / gradebook. So lots of training and resources dedicated to EdSembly and EdSP in the process towards that. And we'll have 2 training sessions in the week for teachers, for our lead teachers. So that professional learning has begun, and very excited about the opportunity. Research and innovation. I know Daryl likes me to mention some of the interesting projects we have on the go. This year was a little different in that we had other things we were focused on. However, this doesn't stop. Innovation doesn't stop. So one of the things we're working on is a CNC router for Matthew Halton High School. It is a It belongs in the shop, the CTS shop, but there's technological advances, and it does fall in the realm of technology, as the creation of items through this CNC router. It's a new one. We're really interested to see if it has applications across our schools. So we're going to be testing that one out. Coding continues, and looking at different ways to use the Arduinos to be able to have students coding. Again, we want to have students have access to coding, and coding that actually would produce something. So these robots would do what you asked them to through the coding. So we're looking at that. It's a continuation. We've been working on this for a number of years, but just the new upgrades in that, the new advances in this, we're interested to see what happens. That's taking place at Livingston. We did before, in our new evergreening process, teachers will receive Chromebooks versus computers. And so on that one, we did a test with Chromebooks at Horace Allen High School, or Horace Allen School. And I do believe Matthew Halton was on that list too. But for right now, I'll just put Horace Allen on there, and we looked and see what implications that would have. So, and last but not least, this is a late pilot, but a good one again, Matthew Halton High School, the live stream device for graduation, meaning that we're trying to find devices as these graduations may be streamed online because people cannot attend. A different piece of technology will be able to allow that to happen easily and go straight to live YouTube without a lot of conversion of files or anything like that, and at high quality. So we're looking at that, see how it goes. If it works, all the schools we can get it to, we'll get it to, and support their communication of that wonderful event. So professional learning opportunities for our technical staff were limited. ATLE was one, and some other provincial gatherings they had virtually we attended, but we really looked at our teachers and focused on that at-home learning piece in preparation, leveraging ISC days and SAPDC to like organizations and days that allowed us to provide some timely virtual professional learning for teachers. And again, the professional learning, the focus now and in the future, in the next, at least up to October, most likely October, November, is training on the new SIS system, the gradebook, Assembly, and EDSCI. So I went through that super quick, and maybe because we want to get ready for an next presenter. So I open that up to any questions you may have right now. Sherry?
Does anybody have any questions? Thanks, Chad. I appreciate that. Technology is always changing and moving so fast, so it's always good to have an update at the board level, just to kind of see where we're headed and what's happening with technology.
Yes, and speaking of technology, I'm having trouble unsharing my.
And I was like, what's happening?
Yeah. So hold on.
Yeah.
And that should work. There we go. Okay. Thank you, folks.
Does anybody else have any other questions, comments? No. Perfect. Thanks so much again, Chad. That was great. I'm super excited about that. Maybe that live stream though for graduation, because we definitely have to, work with what we have. So that sounds exciting. So that'd be good to hear. Next, we're moving on to our F4. We have Livingston leaders. So our student executive, and I believe everyone, yep. Is everyone here? Is Amy here?
Yeah, I saw Amy's in there.
Okay, trying to find everybody in the midst of everything. Okay, so we have Nick Housingay, give a wave there, Nick. Amy Craig, and Regan Kuzik. Where's Regan? Is Regan not here? Should we wait a few minutes?
Regan was going to try and log in, but she was not feeling 100% either. So I'm not sure that she needed some more rest time.
Okay, should we just move ahead then, Eliza? Okay, so we have Amy Craig and Nick Housingay who will present to the Board of Trustees regarding Livingston leaders. Love the new name. Every student can make a difference every day, reflecting on the year and sharing their successes, challenges, growth, and looking towards the future and how they want to do more. We have our teacher advisor, Eliza Gross, and Mitchell Durham with us also. So go ahead, Amy and Nick, take it away.
I'm sorry, do we have our like presentation up?
We can share that up for you if you'd like. I think, Nikki, do you have it that you could put it up? Okay, we'll just be one sec.
Nick, this is when we should have everybody get up and do a quick movement break, right?
Could have had a Just Dance queued up.
I was just going to say that challenge, that dance challenge that we had to do. Whew.
Oh, we had some pretty good dance challenges at our last virtual retreat. That's for sure.
We did. All righty. So whenever you guys are ready, and then you could just let Nikki know, Nick or Amy, when you want her to slide ahead.
Yeah. So, hi everybody. I'm Nick Housengay, and I am a member of Livingston Leaders, and we're just kind of here today to talk about what we've been doing over the last year, and then just what we're planning to do moving forward, and how everybody can help with that. So, yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, so we are a group of leaders from all over Livingston Range School Division. We have 5 students from each of the junior high and senior high schools, and each of these students is kind of handpicked for their dedication to leadership and like just for their desire to make a difference in their community. Within this larger group, we have myself, Nick Housengay. I have had the honor of serving as president for the last 2 years, and then I'll turn it over to Amy to introduce herself as well.
Okay, so I'm Amy. This year and last year, I've been secretary for the regional council, and I've been part of it for a couple of years now, I think 2 or 3. So yeah. And then we also have Regan, who is our treasurer, but she's not here right now, but she's also a very important part, and I think she's been with us for a few years as well.
And then, yeah, we also have our amazing teacher advisors, Mr. Mitchell Durham and Ms. Eliza Gross. And then just before we move on, this picture right here, I just think that this is from the Southern Alberta Student Leadership Conference in 2019 at the U of L. And this was actually a really cool conference for me and Amy because we actually got to lead breakout rooms. So we were in front of a group of like 50 kids, and we were presenting a presentation we'd completely made from scratch in like a month. And yeah, that was just a really cool experience. And I think it just kind of showed how impactful conferences can be. And I actually ended up writing about it in my college application essays. So yeah, it was really impactful. So that was definitely a cool conference. And yeah, we're good to go ahead. Yeah, so for our purpose and vision, kind of where we see ourselves in the school division, our first goal is to inspire and champion student leadership in our schools. So within that, to provide authentic and positive impact on our school culture. Whenever anyone asks why I'm a part of leadership, I always say that, you know, high school is really what you make of it, just like any other opportunity. And leadership is the best way of like making high school your own. You know, you get a direct influence on your high school experience. So I think that having it is really important. Also, to help support increased confidence and a sense of belonging, you know, leadership kind of gives students the opportunity to speak, maybe who haven't ever spoken before, maybe who don't even know that they can speak. And, you know, sometimes the student voice is overlooked, and leadership really gives an opportunity to the student to speak. Ownership of learning, you know, in all of our leadership groups, I think the students really take on a leadership role within the council itself. So I know that at a lot of the schools, the students lead the meetings instead of the teachers, and, you know, just promoting that sense of taking leadership into your own hands. And then also empowering students and staff to create a supportive and safe environment, because the best learning really happens when you feel supported and safe in the environment you're in. Then on top of that goal, we also have building staff and student leadership capacity, just building those leadership skills, and then also honoring and capturing the student voice, like I was kind of saying before.
Okay, so this is me. So basically we have a lot of retreats, or we've had a few so far, and they're super important for us because even though we're in a kind of weird time right now, we can still meet online. But the picture on the top right, that is from October 2019, and that was one of the first retreats we ever had when we could still meet, and that was super cool. But so far this year, we've had 2 retreats online, and even though they're online, we can still have our dance parties, and we still get pizza, so that's pretty fun. But they're actually super important for us. And so in our first retreat, we got to have a guest speaker, and it was Colin Walmsley, which is super cool because he's an FP Walsh alumni, and he told us a lot about his experiences and how, like, some things we could relate to, because even though we're just from like a small town, he still does great things, and he was super inspiring to all of us. And then so our second retreat, virtual again, we got to kind of mix it with the Impact Student Conference, like the Student Leadership Conference, which I'm pretty sure was provincial. So there's so many schools there and so many people, and it was super inspiring, and we're pretty grateful for that because we got the chance to reflect on it after with everyone, and we still get to like meet with our schools and do planning, but then we also have the opportunity to talk with the other schools, bounce ideas off, and reflect on everything we've learned. And then we also have this thing where we talk about our roses and thorns from our personal schools. And for me personally, I find it like super helpful to like see what other schools are doing and what they've been doing, and if it's going well or not, and seeing if we can implement that in our school. And so basically, our retreats are super important for us, and we're so grateful for all of the guest speakers we've got to meet, especially the impact ones this year. They're super cool. So yeah, and I think that's it for this slide.
Yeah, so there are a lot of ways that we make an impact in the division. First of all, like I said earlier, creating a sense of belonging within the schools, where sometimes students might not feel like they have a voice or somewhere to say what they want in their high school experience. It really gives students a place to say what they want. Also, the spirit days and fun events. I know just for Walsh, things like Walsh's Kind Week and Shark Week, none of that would happen without leadership, and it takes a lot of planning that otherwise wouldn't happen. So all of those ideas also come out of Livingston leaders, because those ideas come from collaboration with other schools. Empowering peers, just again giving students an opportunity to speak and feel heard, and that also goes with student voice as well. So for some areas where we hope to continue making a difference, I spoke a little bit earlier about the impact of conferences. You know, I ended up writing one of my college application essays about one of the conferences that we went to last year. And so I think conferences can be really impactful because of the collaboration that happens there. The whole point of Livingston Leaders is to collaborate within our division, but conferences give us an opportunity to even go outside our division and get ideas from all over Alberta and sometimes from all over Canada. So conferences can be really impactful in that way. Also with workshops and professional development, just to kind of improve our leadership skills as a whole. And next year, we'd also like to have some more division-wide challenges and activities, especially being a part this year. It would definitely be great to have some of those to kind of bring us all back together next year when hopefully we're able to be together again. And then also, we have amazing leaders as part of our team, but we also have so many amazing leaders in our division who might not be part of our team or might not have realized their potential yet. So we want to continue reaching out to them and help them realize their potential on top of that.
All right, so I'm going to jump in for this slide. we want to talk a little bit about how the board can help, and we are already just so incredibly grateful for all of the help that we do receive, both in spirit. We've had trustees attending, which is always amazing. And we're also very grateful too for the current financial support that we have. We want to do more though, and we feel that we have the ability to do more as well too. So we want to be able to do more of that professional development. We want to have more of those mentorship opportunities. As Nick mentioned, we want to be able to have those conferences outside of our region to really pull together ideas from across the province and implement those in our school division for our school division. So borrow those ideas, but then make them unique to us. And then giving us more time to collaborate, which again, I think it's really evident that we get so much from that collaboration time, whether it's within our district or outside of our district. It helps us to truly make that bigger impact. And we've spent a lot of time this year talking with our executive and I think with other teacher advisors too. And we've talked about how many challenges this year has presented, but how we've been able to overcome them as best as we can, and how we're just so excited to do more, especially as COVID restrictions are eased and as we potentially do have the opportunity to do more. So if, Nikki, would you please click on that budget request? Is what do you call a grumpy cow? Moody. Ah, so good.
Nikki, you should have access now.
Excellent. We only had time for one bad pun, so that's always good news. All right, so to talk a little bit about this, I'm going to focus on the 2022 projected. So we spent some time as an executive, Livingston leaders, so Eliza and I, as well as Amy, Nick, and Regan, and we talked about where we could see this going. So this is kind of us brainstorming where we think our finances will be at the end of this year, carrying over into next year, and then what we'd potentially like to do. So I'll start at the top here. We're thinking, so this year we didn't spend a whole lot of money because typically we're spending money on transportation costs, which didn't have to be a thing this year. We have gone to conferences in the past, which while we did have the Impact Student Leadership Conference, typically virtual conferences have less of a cost associated with them. So we're expecting about a $4,500 carryover into this year, from this year rather into next year. And we are potentially looking for our board funds to increase to $30,000, which is an increase of about $25,000. And I want to explain very clearly how we see this breaking down. So the first thing I want to emphasize is that we do our own retreats, and we're looking at having a good amount of money to be able to host just really amazing retreats. So providing $1,500 for a keynote speaker, or potentially keynote speakers if we do 2 retreats like we did this year. $3,000 for meals. So this would be things like pizza, which Amy highlighted, very important in the student experience. So that would include meals. In the past at our retreats, we've done sandwiches and things like that. So lots of different food options. Busing, of course, which is a significant cost. So that at $3,000. Facility rental. So in the past, we've rented different facilities, which have been amazing to get kind of just a change of scenery, I think, and new perspective on things. So we've put that at about $1,500. We've also included coverage costs too for substitutes for our teacher advisors. So that's about $10,500. And what that does is it provides 6 days of sub coverage for 7 teachers at $250 each. We've set aside $1,500 for swag as well. So this year we are, of course, rebranding Livingston Leaders. And I also love the name. The alliteration is just chef's kiss, so good. So we are hoping to purchase hoodies and some other swag as well for our Livingston Leaders, so that we can really show that representation throughout the school district as well. And so that schools can kind of see those individuals as leaders in the division as well too. So it's kind of a pride thing a little bit as well. And then where a lot of this cost as well, this budget is going towards. So the Alberta Student Leadership Conference, we had the privilege of going to in 2019, which feels like, I don't know, both forever and no time at all. So we had the opportunity to go to this amazing conference. It was held in Lethbridge, and we brought, I would say, at least 20 students from the school division, I think maybe a few more. And with it being so close, we had a few advantages. Our busing fees weren't that expensive. There's still a cost, but wasn't too much. And we also were able to stay at FP Walsh too. So we actually stayed at the school in the gym overnight. The alarm may have gone off once, but we got it figured out afterwards. Everything was fine. So we were being very creative with that, and that helped to really reduce costs. Last year's Alberta Student Leadership Conference was being planned for Strathmore and Drumheller, which is a very cool location. But it also meant that we were planning for hotel costs, we were planning for increased busing costs, we were planning for even increased student participation. At one point, before COVID had schools go from in-person to at home, Walsh was planning on bringing 18 students, which is just so amazing. But there's also significant registration costs that come with those conferences. So what this does is this $14,000 would provide $2,000 per school to go towards covering some of those costs. And we wouldn't expect it would cover necessarily all of them. And it would be based on how many students each school would want to bring. But there would be some support from Livingston Leaders so that we could participate in those amazing opportunities. We've also got the Southern Alberta Student Leadership Conference, which is in Lethbridge, and that would be at $600. And then the ASWAA, so that's the Impact Student Leadership Conference. So we've got that at $500 as well too. So that brings our total expenditures to just over $36,000. And that leaves us with a deficit of $1,600, which we included in this. We kind of hemmed and hawed a little bit, but we want to also say that we want to fundraise as well too. We don't want to be entirely dependent on carryover amounts, anything like that. So our intention is to do some fundraising, whether that's seeking support from other community members, whether that's maybe hosting like a spring market or something like that. That's been talked about at Walsh before. We are wanting to provide some of those funds as well too. So that is kind of what we're thinking for the budget for next year. And then maybe Nikki, if you could go back to the slides. I believe our last slide is just questions. So thank you for listening, and we'd be happy to take any questions that you may have.
Does anybody have any questions at all? Just a clarity question. The proposed year, were you asking it for like the 1 year? Or was this something that you're asking to go forward with?
I think this is something that we want to make a difference, and we know that it aligns with the focus and the goals of the division, and we hope that this could be something that could continue on, and it could be a continual process. We'd obviously need to look at the numbers, and then those numbers would fluctuate too, depending on where the conferences are held. Whether the A-SLIC conferences are close to home, then we can work with that, or if we have a C-SLIC, which is a Canadian conference, is something that we really want to participate in. So the more students we can impact, I know it can help change the culture and maintain that positive culture within the division. And I just so believe too, if we can help our teachers and our advisors know how important their role is within this job too, it helps them engage and feel less of a burden on that part of it. So, and everybody can be part of the bigger team. So I hope that answered that, Lori.
Yeah, thank you, Eliza. That's very good. I just for some clarity, we'll definitely as a board have to sit down and look at this and then get back to you with an answer. But yeah, does anybody else have any more clarifying questions at all? Trustee Poitras?
I'm sure that we have less, you and I, Lori, because we've been able, and Richard, to attend and be there and see how amazing it is. One thing that I really was interested in and wondering about when I first kind of became involved with the Livingston Leaders, love the new name, and maybe you guys could talk about just a little bit, is how do you move your leadership from you guys being here for 2 or 3 years and really having a good sense of like, what is conference like? How do we get up in front of a group of 50 and do a presentation we made? How do you take your experience and translate that to grade 9s, grade 10s, the junior highs who are first kind of getting interested? How do you share that experience and invite new leaders and get them to be a part of it? Do you guys have things that you do now, or are there things that you want to do in the future?
Well, I would say for me, I think I just like to lead by example a little bit, because I remember when I was in junior high, I was part of regional council as well. And there were a couple of big conferences that we had. And I remember some of the senior students had like a big presentation for the entire conference where they had like a PowerPoint and everything, and they were standing in front of this huge stream of students. And I remember kind of thinking like, hey, if I stay involved with this, I'm going to be up there one day, potentially. Like, do I think I could do that? And so I just kind of, like, whenever I'm speaking at regional council, I always just try to keep that in the back of my mind that somebody might be watching. And yeah.
Amy, did you have anything you wanted to contribute?
Really me too. When I know when I was like, same with Nick, I'd see those high school students doing all those fun things. And I was like, well, and I really looked up to them. And so, yeah, it was kind of the same thing. Like when I go to regional council and I try and bring everything I can back to our school, and it's the same from like our school to regional council. And I just remember that, yeah, there's kids watching, there's kids who are going to fill my spot someday. And I just want to have the best impact on them as I can to like encourage them, you know? So, yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I like that you guys lead by example. I know that my son Miles he said the other day, he was telling me a story, and he was like, well, it was Nick and Amy. Well, you know Nick and Amy, everyone knows that. Anyways, because he's at Walsh, but I know it's been impactful. I just didn't know. There was that picture of the one board that had the quote on it at one of the schools. I didn't know if the Livingston Leaders have a board in every school and that's how they communicate, or if you just try and share by example and those different experiences. So, hey, you guys are doing a great job.
Thanks, Lacey. I just also want to mention that we have put it out as a challenge to all of our Livingston leaders in this last retreat to really think about that recruitment like you're talking about and that succession planning. And so our final meeting here that we'll have with the Livingston leaders at the beginning of June, we'll look at what does that succession look like. We have our entire executive is now graduating, which is a huge success, but it also leaves some vacancies. And so we have our advisors who have been so awesome and supportive are working with the students to try and fill those roles. We want to ensure that we have one student per school represented on our executive team so that that voice can be heard across the board and really inspire our younger students. So.
And just to add on that, I think we've been trying to be as strategic as possible in having students of a variety of ages joining Livingston Leaders. So that when we do have our amazing grade 12s graduating, We don't have this kind of void of experience. We have students who have been in Livingston Leaders for a couple of years, or maybe this is their first year, but they've just been super involved. And I remember the first election that I was a part of in Livingston Leaders. We had a grade 7 student who was running for, I think treasurer, maybe secretary, and like he was just so excited just to be a part of it. So I think that's a big factor too, is that strategic planning of, okay, we know that eventually our grade 12s will graduate. So how do we get as many people involved at as many different age groups as possible, so that we can just have this continuous building upon the knowledge that we have and the leadership skills that we have.
Awesome, thanks. Trustee Yegas?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Nick and Amy, and Eliza and Michael, is it?
Mitchell,
for helping with it. I haven't, as a trustee, I'm not part of that committee that is with the student leaders now. I like your name too, but I guess I wanted to put this to Amy and Nick. How have you found in this last, well, I guess it's the last year and a half, doing this leadership with online, basically, because you haven't really been able to meet that much and put your messages across to the students and that. What are your experiences?
Yeah, so I definitely think that being online presented us with a lot of new challenges, but it also presented us with a lot of new opportunities as well. I know Amy mentioned that we had Colin Walmsley come speak at one of our retreats, and I feel like that probably is something that we wouldn't have been able to do if we were in person, just because being online made it so much more accessible for him. So I'd definitely say that there are some challenges with like connectivity and just staying unified as a group that we've had to deal with, but I'd also say that there have been some opportunities that it has presented us with as well.
Yeah, I'd say the same. Like, it has been, I found it, like, the transition to like online things has been hard for me, and I assume it has been for everyone else. But yeah, with Colin Walmsley, I thought that was like super cool, because like I thought he was a celebrity basically. But yeah, it's been hard, but there's also a lot of like ups and downs to it. But I know like in our personal, like our school council, it's been, being online has like given us the opportunity to like better our like Instagram presence, which is like kids nowadays, Instagram is pretty popular, and so I find it easier to reach out to them through there. And like now that everyone's online, basically it's a lot easier to get information out. So yeah.
Awesome, thanks. Does anybody else have any other questions at all? Well, thanks again so much, you guys, for joining us. It's always great to hear from our Livingston leaders and just show us what you guys are doing in the schools and how you want to move forward. But we'll definitely get back to you. As a board, we need to sit down and have a discussion, and then we'll get back to you as soon as we can. So thanks again for taking time out of your day and joining us and giving us your presentation.
Thank you so much for your time and all your support.
Thanks, you.
Guys.
Thank you.
All right, just moving on in our agenda now to F5, Zone 6 admin PAR update. As Trustee Long was unable to attend this meeting with us today, I would just give a quick Zone 6 update for him. There's not much to tell right now. Our admin PAR evening is tomorrow night. Invitations have been sent out, and the overall winner will be announced tomorrow at the banquet. It of course is virtually, as we cannot get together, but the recommendation moving forward was still for school boards to put forth a gift card for their nominees if they so choose. So I'll leave that up to the board. Also, Zone 6 did some boxes for our Edwin Parr nominees. We went to this Expressions in Lethbridge, and they were able to organize these boxes that were just amazing. And I was able to deliver some of them to the board office, and some of them, of course, we had to mail, as there's 10 boards in our school division. So our Edwin Park nominees all received one of those, along with, so they'll open up those. They said we can open them up either at the banquet and enjoy the little treats, or they can open them ahead of time. So we're super excited to see that. I think that was it for, we have our general meeting in the morning, tomorrow morning. If everyone wanted to join, we'll be discussing the budget, ASBA's budget, and to the spring general meeting and the Zone 6. So again, I think I sent out the link to everybody in between our meetings today. So if everybody just text or email, you can join on those anytime. Any questions? All right. Moving on to our key messages, guys. What would you like from our key messages today?
Presentation by Livingston Leader and our approval of the budget as well as the 3-year education plan. That's 3, all done.
So both presentations and then our, yeah, budget and our, yeah, ed plan. Does that sound good to everybody?
That sounds good.
So that was the 2 presentations.
Yep.
And
the budget.
And the budget and the education plan.
Yep.
Those are the 3. Okay.
Perfect. All right, everybody. If there's nothing else, we'll just make a motion to adjourn. Can I get someone to make the motion?
That.
Oh, Trustee Burdette. At 3:50.
There we go.
Thanks, everyone.
Good job.
See you later. What? Oh, all in favor.
Job.
Oh, good job. Thanks. All right, everybody. Have a good night. We'll see you at our next meeting.
Could we just, Brad and Lori, I hate to ask you to stay on for a minute, but
sure.
The reason